Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the S1E8 episode, and today I'm going to cover one of my favorite countries around Serbia, the Republika of Srpska, which was founded on January 9th, 1992, as a response to, as a bastion of freedom and defense from the history that has repeated itself in the Serbian soil of Republika Srpska. Before that, we have to just go a little bit back in the past and explain why the foundation of Republika Srpska was actually one of the amazing things Serbs have done in that country. So back a little bit a century ago, where there was this ongoing World War One, it was because of Gavrilo Princip. Well, actually, it wasn't because of Gavrilo Princip, but here is the pre-context. So in 1912, there was this Balkan War, one where the unified countries around, like the Serbia, Greece, Romania, Montenegro, all united to get rid of the fucking Turks and never see their ugly rearing faces ever again. So they win in those Balkan wars, and now there is a second Balkan War. Now you're probably wondering why. Because the Bulgarians were dissatisfied with what was going on when it comes to sharing the prize and the war loot in this context. So at the diplomacy table, the Serbs go, we own this, and that, and to you Bulgarians, here is this, and that. The Bulgarians themselves, they go, no, Batko, I want everything. And Serbs go, on the diplomacy table, they go, no, you cannot, because we want it, and by facts and the war loot, blah blah, it belongs to us. Bulgarians get offended, triggered, as it's in their Bulgarian stabbing nature, and they say at the table, no, we want what we actually suggested and recommended, it belongs to us, or else. And now the Serbs are looking at them, and they tip their head and they fix it and go, or else what, faggot. And now Bulgarians get offended, and now we go in one of my favorite rivalries, Serbia versus Bulgaria. Battle of Bregalnica. Now, I don't know for which reason now Bulgarians have forgotten that we always beat the shit out of them, except for that one defeat because King Milad got drunk in 1881 and he was drunk and he went to fight Bulgarians and he lost, which was their only victory against us. But that's not the point. Point is, now we go to June 30th, 1913, the Battle of Bregalnica, which lasted for 7 to 8 days, and it was ended on July 6th or 7th. Now, Bregalnica has now been one of my favorite references when it comes to comparing to something, where Serbs fucking annihilated the Bulgarians at the Battle of Bregalnica. Now, those territories that we suggested at the diplomacy table have now legit become ours. So, because we told you so, it's ours and it belongs to us, and there is nothing you actually do about it. So, Bulgarians started to cry like little girls, and they were like evil Serbs, and that's the prerequisite of what's going to happen 80 plus years from now. So, June 28th, 1914. Now, some of you who may have not been introduced to the Serbian tradition, culture, and history, June 28th is a very integral part of Serbian history and identity because it gives a tribute to one of the greatest battles in the not just in Serbian history, but history overall, on June 28th, 1389, where the Serbian army conflicted with the Turkish rising Ottoman Empire, guided before he died, Emperor Murat, Tsar Murat, and we had Lazar Hrebeljanović, Miloš Obilić, Toplica, and etc. Vuk Branković. And I'll get to Vuk Branković in a couple of moments. So now we have beaten the Turks at the Battle of Kosovo 1389, and no, I don't want to hear communists and second Serbians in the comments saying, well, no, you actually lost. Actually, it was a terrible battle, and we lost, and Vuk Branković is a traitor. No, listen, communist dipshit. I know you guys are retarded by nature, but hear the fuck out. So, Murat had died, and now he was in charge was now Bayazid, who strangled his own brother. I guess Turks love to choke their own brothers and fuck young boys. Point is, Lazar Hrebeljanović and Miloš Obilić had died indeed, but Murat had died first. So technically, Serbs had actually beaten Turks at the Kosovo field, but because of the communists and the entire perception and the Vienna-Berlin school, they all wanted to shift that a little bit because reasons, you always have to dispute somebody else's war victory. It's not like at the Battle of Waterloo 1815 where Napoleon lost only because of the fucking rain and because his lieutenant or whatever the fuck was late to a Waterloo meeting and he lost. Anyway, Now, since you're introduced, and I'll explain Brankovic, Vuk Brankovic. Vuk Brankovic is actually the member of the army where we won in 1389, but during the centuries, Vuk Brankovic received the Judas treatment from the Serbian people, and I'll explain why. So after the battle was said and done, it was over, Vuk Brankovic had gone back and had to tell people what had transpired at the Kosovo field, because to explain it in a very simple requisites. So back then there was no Instagram live or TikTok live or anything sort of live where you can actually record it, fact word, record it, and just sell it to the people and tell them, hey guys, I'm fucking stabbing Murat to death. I hope you guys follow me for my next YouTube channel. I'm Miloš Obilić. Follow me for some great advice. No, that wasn't the case. So Vuk Brankovic was actually the eyes, or like a wise owl, who told people that Lazar had died, Miloš Obilić had died, and that we actually won, with like consider like 1389 like a Pier's victory, Pirova pobjeda. We lost with very heavy losses, but we actually won in the long run. So that was like a testament of Serbian will to fight the tyrants until the end of times. Now, fast forward to the 1914, where in this century, Vuk Brankovic was still considered a traitor, but it's actually not. His guilt had got rid of early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken, where with the new generation of millennials, we started to remove the guilt from Vuk Brankovic. He was no longer the guilt in charge. He was no longer the scapegoat or the Judas to the Lazar Hrebiljanovic. Now, Franz Ferdinand is now using the Serbian national holiday, one of the greatest, to provoke people in Sarajevo, in Republika Srbska, because Gavrilo Princip was member of the Young Bosnia. And Young Bosnia was a nationalist Serbian Bosnian movement who wanted to unite all the Serbs in the one picture, South Slavs. Anyway, Franz Ferdinand goes on this GoPro drive-through throughout Sarajevo with his wife, pregnant wife. And now, here is what actually happened on that day, according to the sources, June 28, 1914. The first accident happened when one of the members of Young Bosnia, Mlada Bosna, had thrown a bomb in front of his car, but he had not damaged or killed Franz Ferdinand, so he scraped away, he scooted away, he drove away, and he got alive. For now. Now, Franz Ferdinand is now a little bit under the impression, under the weather, and kind of he's like, maybe I should go away because I'm not currently welcome and it's a Serbian national holiday. I know I'm in Sarajevo, but still there are Serbs living in Sarajevo. So that's like me using the most mainstream joke told in Serbia about the Bosnians. I'm not talking about Republika Srbska, I'm talking about Muslim Serbs. I go to Sarajevo, I go to the bakery, and I ask for burek with cheese. They're gonna fucking kill me, you know? So anyway, Franz Ferdinand drives away, and the driver goes about his business as if nothing had happened just 5 minutes ago, where the bomb was thrown onto his car. And now we go to my favorite part about this history part. So Franz Ferdinand parks in front of this coffee shop. Guess who is at the coffee shop drinking his coffee? I guess Turkish coffee, depends what he drank that day. None other than, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gavrilo Princip. Now, he sees Franz Ferdinand stopping at the coffee shop, and Gavrilo Princip is like, oh boy, today must be my lucky day. Howdy, y'all. And he takes the gun and he commits a triple kill. One of the greatest kills in the history of the 20th century. When you kill the tyrant, and now, after the triple kill of Gavrilo Princip, the fucking Sigma of the century, Austro-Hungarians are getting upset and triggered, but I don't know why. He provoked himself by getting shot and going to Sarajevo. That's like me going to, let's say, Auschwitz and me saying it never happened. You know, it's going to get a lot of controversy. But anyway, 271K at best. Anyway, now Austro-Hungary is now using this as a death of Franz Ferdinand to attack and gets enraged. And here's what happens in Austro-Hungary. In Austro-Hungary, now the people themselves, they start to fucking get riled, and they start chasing Serbs in Vienna, and they start not butchering, but flaming down their objects. By objects, I mean houses, business offices, whatever the hell you want to consider in the objects. So the houses, bakeries where Serbs lived, they committed a fucking riot, and they were really heavily triggered because their favorite bronze boy Franz Ferdinand got shot, triple killed by Gavrilo Princip, the fucking Sigma. And now Austro-Hungarians have now shown their famous democratic enlightenment face. So during the World War One, so Austro-Hungarians have started to not just play dirty, but to fucking execute anyone who didn't speak German in the Serbia. So they started to commit amazing, and amazing I mean by irony in the brackets, morbid executions, hangings without any evidence, or it was war. I guess in war there were different roles, and we fucking killed the Serbs because we want to. Now they also have the Schluss army, or squad, who was like a precursor for the 100th Division. So what basically boils down to, they were hired to fucking kill anyone that's not Austro-Hungarian. So when I mean atrocities, so the atrocities that were committed were heavily morbid. So they would hang people, young women, etc. So they shoot anyone, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, shoot everyone on sight that's not Austro-Hungarian. So there were a lot of documented atrocities from Austro-Hungarian, but which is the irony, where they were perpetuating themselves prior to the 1914 accident of the 28th of June. They were perpetuating themselves as the great enlighteners, Europe. Europe, when it comes to relationship between Europe and Serbia, Europe always loves to say to us, we are the great enlighteners, where in factual history, the wars had happened just because they wanted to do something with us, or they wanted to do something with the, like Napoleon, where Serbians could actually have won at the first Serbian uprising that lasted from 1804 until 1813, and the Russia had to sign a peace treaty with the Turkey, but this fucking cocksucker piece of shit Napoleon, schizophrenic, he wants to fuck with Russia, and he got his ass kicked in so many ways. And the French themselves, they also have this fucking mentality like Americans for Vietnam. In the brackets, they also consider that Napoleon could have won and defeated Russians, which is for me the Hans Landa laughter from the Inglourious Basterds. So that's my laughter. Anyway, back to the World War One. So now it's shenanigans all over the Europe and such, people killing each other, Germans against Russians, October Revolution 1917. And all of a sudden, when war had ended on the November 11th, 1918, Serbia as a country, as a state, as a nation, as a people, have lost 85+% of a male population. Now, of course, second Serbians and other people are going to say it's less, but no, it's not. It's 80% at best. And I'm hoping it's 80%, but it's, according to some other sources, it's even more. So when you lose an 85% of a male population, so here is what happens. It transpires. So what happens is that now that's called a PTSD or a trauma, because when a group of people, or in this case Serbia, when a nation suffers that much of a loss of 85% of male population, now you're under trauma and you're under severe shell shock. Now, because back then in 1918, the original name for the PTSD was shell shock. Thank you, George Carlin, from the education. We'll get to the explanation in a second. So under shell shock, now you tend to do irrational things, and you see things irrationally, not rationally, because your brain is just in one mode, fight or flight. There is no other modes of that. So now King Alexander is given a choice, either make, after Pera had died, King like Petar Karađorđević, he was the leader of blah blah, and now Aca Obrenović, he is like, okay, Aco, you have two choices: Greater Serbia, recuperate, restore the former glory that we had prior to the 1914 incident. Well, incident, actually, the response to the provocation. And now he either chooses Great Serbia to renew, blah blah blah, or he does the most retarded thing that he could have done, and now I'm going to get flamed for it. But listen, I know, but we're still making those same mistakes, because now he creates on December 1st, 1918, the Kingdom of Serbs, Slovenians, and Croats, S1E8-The, which gets like a precursor in the brackets for Cancelslavia, and I'll explain why. Croats themselves, even back then, had different ideology, and Slovenians as well. Slovenia, Ljubljana, Luka Doncic, where he's from. So Slovenians and Croats are completely, when you put in the parallel, in the mirror, We are Orthodox. These motherfuckers are Catholics. And even prior to the 1914 blah blah blah, so the Croats who lived in Austro-Hungary, they never had their own state up until 1941. So no, fuck you Croats, you never had a state, you always had a fictional history. That's not my fault, that's yours. And Croats never lived in Dubrovnik until 1941, so it's a terrible tragedy. So Croats have always been like Catholic Serbs, and they always had like a complete diametral, like diametric and everything opposite of us when it comes to ideology, the nation, and the people, and blah blah blah. So they don't look the same way, and they probably never will as us, as the Serbs. So the Serbs are having orthodox tendencies towards the rulership and identity and whatnot. Croats and Slovenians are complete diametrical opposite of us, so they have nothing to do with us in the sense of, except they edited their language so it doesn't sound like original Serbian. But anyway, when this was happening in 1918, so it was met with like, yeah, sure, I guess it wasn't that popular. It was met with a lukewarm reception, if I may add, according to the historical sources back then. So it was like, yeah, okay, it's the best that we get. We could have gone with the Greater Serbia. I fucking hate coulda, shoulda, woulda. We could have gone with Greater Serbia, but it is what it is. So now, you're probably wondering, so what happened in 1918 until the Austrian painter resurrected? So the tensions were kind of there, but it wasn't that much visible to the human eye. But under the surface, it started to grow very little, like when you plant a seed in the earth in order to grow like fruits and vegetables. As I mentioned, it's not visible via human eye, but you can see when it comes to the system and the behavior and the nationality and mentality of the people, it's not the pleasant, it's more like being pleasant for the sake of being pleasant. And now the Slovenians, they want their own thing. Croats are trying to be compatible. Each group of people are trying to be compatible. Not competitive, compatible with each other. But you see, it's like trying to wear sneakers on a wrong foot. It's not going to do you wonders. It's going to be very unpleasant. So SHS was like wearing sneakers on the wrong foot, like wearing left on the right and vice versa. You're trying to be pleasant for the sake of being pleasant and blah blah. So in those 2 decades, Croats, I'll go with the Croats, so they themselves, they started to envision that we are these evil oppressors, suppressors. We are these evil Serbo-Chetnik Serbs. So that was prior to even Chetnik being popular in the Helm area. So now, fast forward, now the Austrian painter guy shows up in Zagreb, and he is being greeted as the savior, as the hero of the people from Croatia, which gets to the formation of NDH in 1941 with the lead of Ante Pavelic. Now, Ante Pavelic loved Serbs the same way I love getting up in the morning, or in the same way I love Bulgarians. So you get the reference. I'm being very ironic. So Ante Pavelic is now in charge, and he is looking around and he goes, boy, I fucking hate Serbs and want them get fucking executed or removed from this country's existence. So they create the most controversial and most morbid concentration camp called Jasenovac. I'll cover Jasenovac in the next video. Jasenovac makes Auschwitz and Dachau like Cartoon Network when it comes to the executions methods. And if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me in the comments, Ustashes themselves had like 40 plus methods for killing Serbs, including children and babies. So when you mention the great Europe and the democracy, I'm just going to say it could have been avoided, but that's a long story. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Anyway, with that formation of the concentration camp, so according to the sources, so Gideon Greif, the Jewish investigator, had actually found out that currently in Jasenovac, as we speak, there are over 840,000 corpses, more or less, and God forbid ask how many more in the rivers of Sava and Danube. So up until this day, the exact number is still not proven or shown, but according to Professor Radovan Damjanovic and Gideon Greif, that number tends to be 840,000 plus and growing. How many in total we'll probably never going to discover, because after liberation of 1945, the Ustaše themselves had removed most of the evidence of the recollection of that ever being, with the documents and the papers and the witnesses, etc. So that has been heavily edited, if I may heavily. Anyway, so after 1945, now we fall under communist, one of the greatest tragedies as well. No worries, go slowly towards the Republika Srbska. I just have to put the context. Under Slavia now, Tito in charge, or Chopovi, now does some heavily edits in the options of running a state. So in the options, he goes like edits mostly that's connected to the Serbs themselves. So he kind of edits, you can't say you're Serbian, you can't say anything that's kind of gives you the one and up to standing out. To one of the main tropes in Slavia was not being allowed to stand out. You have to be sorry, it's a natural reaction, equal. When I say equal, I mean Orwellian equal, more equal to the others, but you get the point and the gist. Tito now changes the options, and usually what he did in this Slavia, he gives advantage to every other nation around us except us. And in that Slavia, so he managed some peace for 35 plus years, and the communist lovers still love to recollect how Slavia was a great country, but in it, the Serbs themselves were kind of asleep after World War II, and that national identity and the trigger that we have was kind of not being used that much, and now Serbs are now living under autopilot identity. But the identity itself is heavily edited. You have to say you were Yugoslavian, not Serbian, because you would get into trouble even if you tell a joke in the Slavia about Chopovi being retarded or something. You're going to get either shot, approached by some dark cars at 11-12 p.m. They will pick you up and you will no longer be seen by anybody else in the history. Or maybe go to Goli Otok, where Chopovi sent political dissidents or people who opposed him very, very directly. Now, Chopovi himself got rid of Krcun, and because Krcun was also imagine a younger brother, but not relationship-wise, Serbian hatred-wise of Ante Pavelic. So Krcun hated Serbs the same way I hate Bulgarians. But that's not the point. The point is, now under Slavia in the 70s, now the Serbs are starting to get awake, and here is the kicker. Serbs now start to focus, they're looking around, and they slowly start to turn their necks towards this random guy who doesn't even speak Serbian, and he goes, and the Serbs themselves, they go, who the fuck are you? And they go, and he go, who the fuck is this nigga? And they're really suspicious of him, and they go kind of. And the movies, it's called The Black Wave, in the late 60s and early 70s, they started to address the issues of socialistic Slavia, and they start to call out the ruling and the government itself, which in socialists, it's not allowed to call out the government. And now Chopov is now seeing that the Serbs are slowly starting to awake, and the people that were sleeping in those beds are now more and more awake, and they're starting to go look around, and they still focus their spotlights. The spotlight itself kind of goes towards him and his government, and the Serbs in the 71, 2, 3, 4, etc. They're starting now to go over him and go, who the fuck are you? Who the fuck is this guy? Now they're turning to their parents, and the parents themselves, they go, oh, that's our president. And the youth itself is like, so Chopovi, before he croaked on the 4th of May of 1980, does two things that kills the Serbian identity. Really sabotages to the hardcore extreme. Sabotage number one, Constitution in 1974, where he lets Albanians to play Skyrim adventures on Serbs, and he lets them live there, and he goes by Bratstvo and Jedinstvo. God, I hate Bratstvo and Jedinstvo. It makes me vomit to my stomach. And he lets them go loose around, and even though that was not very smart to do, because Branislav Nushi had sent in the 1890s the document to Serbian government that Albanians are trying to, just democratically remove Serb from its existence because they're not very, they really don't like us back there at Kosovo. So he creates this constitution and he lets them loose because 34 years later they take away your territory that's considered like a holy land, but Serbs will be Serbs, retarded when it comes to politics, and when we have to do something for ourselves, we fucking commit suicide. Cancer thing number two, Chopovi creates something that we call Second Serbians. Second Serbians are a group of people who had the task to sabotage or demonize anything that's related to Serbs. What I mean by that now, Second Serbians have now shifted the mirror. So what I mean shifted the mirror, now I mean because I'm getting serious into this shit. So Second Serbians are now shifting the mirror. They put the blame of all other Serbian defeats in history. They blame the people. When I mean blame the people, I mean everything that happened negative in the history in Czechoslovakia or in Serbia, everything by Serbs' fault. If you cough and you choke on your own spit, that's by the evil Serbs. Serbian history now gets heavily edited, and now they put that we all suffered actually defeats in Serbian history, and that even those victories are now just in the muddied water between winning and losing. And now they put this defeatist mentality in the minds of Serbian people, because Chopovic saw that if we refresh our memory and now we move on without this piece of shit of hello Chopovic, now Chopovic wanted to edit history, and before he croaks and serves Lucifer in the ninth circle of hell, now he had his history where the Serbs are always the losers and never the winners of any history. There he implements the story where we actually lost in 1389, where it was actually a good thing that we were led by Turks for. And now they also installed the 500 BS myth of history of Serbs being under Turks for 500 years. 500, sorry. So technically, when you look the map of Serbia, starting from the north to the south and the west and the east, now you will see that those other territories in Serbia, I'm talking about, let's say, Pirot, Zaječar, Zrenjanin, Beograd, Novi Sad, Negotin, So all those cities in Serbia were like 200, 300 plus years at best. Only the southern parts that's relegated to my hometown, the paprika city of Leskovac and the gibber city of terrible Niš. They were under 400 plus years, but not over 500 years. So Chopovic, as I mentioned, manages to sabotage and put them and create in his laboratory the second Serbians who are going to continue to work in the name of the communists, because now the communist sons and the daughters, whores, now they're in the charge of Serbia currently as we speak. And I'm even going to go on a limb and say that even the current Alhamdulillah works in the name of the Chopovic. So when you look the entire picture, so when he dies, now the tensions are simmering slowly. Now that tension from the SHS, now it's boiling over to the Czechoslovakia. And now in the 80s, the tensions are very, very now vivid and seeable to the human eye. Now they started to, see each other not longer as friends. Now they're trying to distance themselves, like in terms of collective unconscious. Now people are starting to say something that they couldn't have during the Chopovic era. The entire 80s decades in Serbia was now put as the powder keg, and there was only one person who is going to put the light to the powder keg, and it's nobody can beat you with the speech in 1988 in Gazimestan. Niko ne sme da vas bije. So when Mr. Niko ne sme da vas bije came to power, so he kind of wanted to protect national interest, and here's where we go to Republika Srbska, 9th of January 1992. So there was this like a town hall meeting between the Serbs and the Croats and the Bosniak parliament representative members. So the Serbian parliament representative members, who were actually the late ones who created their own political party, they're having a speech, and he's going back and forth. He's just warning Croats and Bosniaks on the March 1st, 1990, if I'm not mistaken. He tells them, okay, guys, we're just going to be peaceful as much as we can. We're doing our best, and now tensions are high, but let's be united, the most common topic in Serbia. But now the problem is that Bosniak side, the parliament, is being guided by Alija Izetbegovic, who is not in fond of the Serbs at all. And now you have Tudjman, the Croatian guy, who's also in the favor of Serbs not existing in the first place in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now, Bosnia and Herzegovina has been a soil where they actually used all, going from Austro-Hungary to the communist, and now even today's political climate, they always wanted to hate the Serbs. I'm not going to say that even those members from other countries, like some folly guy, whatever the fuck, they were always use the political tools, to always sow hatred for the Serbs and amongst the Serbs. And now Izetbegovic and Tudjman, they're looking their own interest, and each of them is trying to secede from Yugoslavia, Counter-Slavia. Now that came to fruition, and Republika Srbska kind of sees they're sharpening their weapons and they're starting to swear something to themselves in the beard. And now the Serbs from the Republika Srbska foundation of 1992, January 9th, the Serbs who live there, Bosnian Serbs, they kind of go, yeah, I don't like the way you guys are sharpening knives and looking at us suspiciously. So, rest and behold, January 9th, 1992, the foundation of Republika Srbska as a bastion of freedom and to prevent any future historical repentance on a YouTube button for 10 hours. They protect themselves, but in those early 90s, Republika Srbska had more sabotage than French people love to have their own wines. So under the guidance of Radovan Karadžić and Ratko Mladić, so Ratko Mladić was a response to all the jihadist terrorist movement throughout Bosnia. And when it comes to Srebrenica and the staka for Bosnian people to cry for 30 years straight about Srebrenica. For me personally, I don't believe there was a genocide because I can actually prove you with law arguments that's not the case. But Ratko Mladić had caught some military members and executed them along with some civilians, but most of the civilians themselves, they were sent off in their buses. And if you can find a YouTube video of the female members, I'm talking about senior citizens themselves, when they were in the buses and Ratko Mladić was greeting them in the bus, you could see the disappointment of their faces because the subcontext, the pre-context, the brackets, the iceberg is actually all those female members, the senior citizens, the grandpas and the grandmas, and the women, they were kind of getting expected for Ratko Mladić to kill them all so they can sacrifice themselves in the name of Greater Bosnia. But that wasn't the case. So Ratko Mladić sends most of the civilians in their buses and he ships them off to safety. And Srebrenica is now kept under the guidance of European, like a UN, and they didn't know that it's going to happen. Of course, Europeans and Americans have a common trope. They don't know it's going to happen. Of course they don't know. Now, I'm probably going to get upset a lot of people, especially from those parts of the area. I'm going to say it didn't happen. Ratko Mladić was more of an answer, as I mentioned, as you guys love to say, and the European cocksuckers, that there was a genocide. So when you look back, that's July 11th, 1995. You don't go back in history and just go 3 years earlier when that same genocide was committed to the Serbs in Srebrenica. But that doesn't count, I guess. Every time you kill Serbs, that doesn't count because Serbs are not people. We are evil Serbo-Chetniks, and the narrative, the propaganda was now shown that basically Serbs in the 90s, the entire decade, we were evil Serbo-Chetniks who drank baby's blood in the name of Lucifer. Now we are these evil guys when we fucking hate everyone. We are barbarians, retarded, degenerates. Words by Joe Biden, by the way, the former president of the United States of Baron Oil and Morica. And now you see Republika Srbska is now trying to live by their own after that Dayton agreement in December of 1995. And you can actually see the face of Niko Nespedava's beer. He is not really pleased with the contract, and he's sitting right next to Tudjman, the same guy who screwed him in the first place. Now, even Sloba himself had imposed some sanctions on Republika Srbska. I have no idea fucking why. And with all that said, so it was the one entire WWE event when it comes to civil war in the 90s. And they seceded themselves, like the Muslim Serbs and the Catholic Serbs, they have their own state. Finally, the atrocities were committed on all sides. I'm not just saying that we were saints of Saint Nicholas or Saint Stefan Nemanja. Yes, of course, we killed, you guys killed, but it's a different context which you're actually referring to. So in order to understand Serbian history, the Serbs defended themselves from the over-exaggeration when they're starting to get slaughtered. Now, in the news, in the media, every time, it's nobody... Every time Serbs die, nobody gives a shit. But like a singular guy that's not Serbian, and he's going to get the media attention, and guess who's going to get blamed for that? Of course, it's the evil Serb from Republika Srbska. So the foundation of Republika Srbska was the answer to all the historical repetitive nature of people who are not Serbs. They want to fucking exterminate them, so they don't want to live anymore with them. And with that said, 33 some years later, now the tensions are a bit high due to the political climate now between the current Alhamdulillah and now Babic woman, who got put in charge because Dodik was sentenced to not obeying to the High Representative, and now he's just now he's doing his bear thing, he's stealing and stuff, whatever the fuck. So now the tension is now between Serbs from Republika Srbska and the people from Serbia. Now Serbia is now looking, not I'm talking about some other retarded Serbs. Serbs are now looking towards Srpska like preko Drinci, and now they're using that like a slur to insult them because they don't see them as human or not non-Serbian. I don't know why. So I'm using the point is that political narrative and propaganda from the retarded politicians who are all a bunch of same faggots, they're using that narrative to argue for Serbs and Serbs from Srpska and Serbia amongst themselves, where Srpska wants to be united with the Republic of Serbia, but now politicians being mentally disabled pieces of shit, they're using this political tension to separate ourselves because we have failed on this exam called unity that has not been existed in the Serbian nation since what was it again? 1355. So 670 years later, are Serbs united? Nope. Hey, Mr. Stefan Dusan, he comes to my guest and he's like, hey, dude, are Serbs united? No, but you still have 3 C's, right? Right? And I go, uh, yeah, we had. What do you mean had? I mean we have them. It's just they're in the property of somebody else. What, you sold them? Uh, Mr. Dushan, Stefan, please don't fucking kill me. But well, you can say that they were sold, but they're ours. It's just there are people pretending not to be Serbs. So can't you kill them, Mr. Dushan? I mean, I wish, but European Union democracy. What's a democracy? Well, the voting thing. I'm sure you had it in your 14th century where you guys vote. No. What about my 3 C's? Um, well, Montenegro has its C, but is it Serbian? Uh, I'm looking over to Montenegro people. Yes, yeah, it's ours. Yeah, sure. What about the other C's from Croatia? Oh, um, well, well, that C is kind of not ours currently. What I mean, it's not ours, and you get the gist of it. So it's a funny thing. Yeah, Stefan Dushan, you still have my 3 C's, right, Serbs? My Serbs, you still have them? Well, I guess. Sure. Who's gonna tell him? No, I'm not gonna tell him. You're gonna tell him. You're gonna tell him. You're watching. You're gonna tell Dushan. We had 3 C's, and now, anyway. So Republika Srpska was a bastion of defense and the freedom of speech, and not to get slaughtered again by the Austro-Hungarians, Ustaše, communists, Croatians, Bosniaks. So every time there was an opportunity to remove the Serbs from Republika Srpska, they defended themselves. So to say a very controversial thing, very controversial, Kosovo, it can fall down to Albanians, whatever the fuck. But if Republika Srpska falls to somebody else and it gets taken over, it's GG, my friend. Then, my friend, you can just sell everything Serbian because we won't exist. If we don't unite sometime in the close future, then you can just say we're no longer Serbian, we're Martians. It's going to happen again because we love to repeat our history with ignorance. We have not been united since 1355. I hope to God we do, but if not, oh well, it was nice being Serbian. As Mesha Selimic was said, being Serbian is great, but highly expensive. Thank you so much for this S1E8 episode, Republika Srpska as a bastion of freedom, and thank you guys for your immense sacrifice. It's not forgotten like it used to be back in the century. So Christ is King, and I'll see you again in S1E9, where I'm going to cover Jasenovac, and in S1E10, I'm going to cover Tolin Blood. Now you probably wonder what's Tolin Blood. Well, as the Riddler said to the Batman, you'll see.